Welcome to another episode of It Had to Be Said podcast, where we say out loud what you think in private. No topic is off limits. And, today's topic, we're going to be talking about situational awareness, right? And there was the incident that happened in the Walmart parking lot where you had a mother and another family member, along with a baby, uh, who apparently was shoplifting. Police was called, and they ran into their vehicle. By the way, they had diapers. They ran to the vehicle and they were trying to escape. And at that point, allegedly, they aimed the vehicle at one of the officers, and multiple officers were on the scene. And one of the officers shot into the vehicle, critically injuring one of the adults, and the child later deceased from the bullet wound as well. And, of course, whenever the police is involved and it's a person of a black or brown race, it becomes a situation of us against them, the police against us, and it becomes a thing of, race becomes a factor, and the officer may be white. And so that's going to become another factor. And that's what the community is really going to focus on. And that's really what they're protesting, and they're in front of Walmart. They want to riot, and they want no justice, no peace. And that may be for one group of people. That may be for one group of people. I'm not saying they're right, not saying they're wrong. But for what I want to talk about in this podcast, and one of the things that I want to focus on in this podcast, and what my podcast is all about, is about educating people and, enlightening them. So this way, less people go to jail, less people get killed, and less tragedies like this happen. Now, here's the thing. I think it's important that we teach young people situational awareness, right? I think it's important that we teach young people, if you are going to do something, be prepared to do the time. If you're going to do the crime, be prepared to do the time, and also just to be like, hey, you know what? Like, let's use this as a prime example. Like, you go into the store and you stole some Pampers. You may need it, right? And then the discussion on top of that is online is also, why would a mother have to steal Pampers? And then they always want to add the black in front of it. Why would a black mother need to steal the Pampers? Things are hard out here for a black woman. Things are hard out here for everyone. But, I used to work for Walmart. I used to be a district manager for Walmart. I used to be in charge of the loss prevention department as well. I was an APC for Walmart, Asset Protection Coordinator. And I can tell you like this. At the stores that I covered and some of the other colleagues that I had, if a mother or even a father came in and they stole baby stuff, baby foods, we would let them go. In most cases, we would pay for the stuff for them, or some of the off-duty officers who are working on the shift would pay for the things for them. I've had assistant managers who would say, I'll just pay for it, because the managers there, remember, to be a manager, an assistant manager, or even a store manager at Walmart, you don't need a college degree. You just need to be somebody who's been with the company long enough and moved up the ladder. So a lot of people understand how difficult it is out there, and sometimes people make bad decisions. But I will tell you this. We've had cases where, somebody steals baby formula, and then they have a bunch of beauty supplies with them, and charges are pressed. And, the person either goes to jail or get a PTA, promise to appear. But let's just go back to this one specific incident, right? And the reason why I talk about situational awareness is when this young lady got out of the Walmart and she realized they were onto her, and she had her baby in her hand, it should have just been a simple situation of, look, the police are here. I got my baby with me. It's a pair of diapers. If there's nothing else extra inside the box, it's just a pair of diapers. a pack of diapers. This is a promise to appear, a PTA. You don't even go to jail in most cases because that's like what, $30, $40 for that box of Pampers. Promise to appear. Now, if you have enough situational awareness and clarity to sit there and say, okay, I walked into the store, I stole this. Here are the police out here. They're ready to get me. I can just give this up, misdemeanor, and I'm done. Or I can get into my car, which is not stolen. So the minute they read the tag, they're going to be able to figure out who I am and everything else like that. Then we can get into this. Then we can get into a high-speed chase. I can get arrested for resisting arrest, traffic violations, shoplifting, child endangerment, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So now it becomes a felony. It's like have enough situational awareness to understand that a promise to appear, which is basically like a ticket, they just simply say, well, this is not enough for us to put you in the back of a police car, drive you down to the jail station, burn gas, do all that paperwork, and then, lock you up in jail and have to feed you. It's not a big enough crime, so here's a promise to appear. Most states have it. I'm not sure if Mississippi has it, but I knew here in Florida, especially in the Miami area, we used the PTA all the time because we didn't want to see people going to jail and then having to pay money to bail themselves out. And this is when I was in charge of loss prevention, or I worked loss prevention at Walmart, right? And I'm not defending Walmart or anything else like this. Like I said, people can protest the fact that the police even shot into the car when they knew there was a child in there. And we don't know if that particular officer know if there was a child in there because you had multiple officers on the scene. Maybe the one from who initially stopped them or tried to chase them down knew that there was a baby in the car. Maybe an oncoming officer who just pulled up on the scene or whatever did not know about the baby being in the car. Who knows? I'm just going to wait on all of the facts to come out. All right. And I think that's an issue that's happening here in America, especially in the Black and brown communities, because, they want to be the victim so bad. They want to be the victim so bad, and they want to have somebody to hate so much that as soon as something happens, they insist on that person's instantly guilty. And then you have the Carmelo Anthony thing. And it's like, no, y'all got to do a deep dive investigation. So I think it's so hypocritical when you look at, and I'm not saying all of the Black and brown community, but I think it's extremely hypocritical when you look at these extremists in the Black community who want, instant justice for them when an officer or a white person does something, but then when, Carmelo Anthony does something, they want, detailed evidence. And even with all the evidence and the testimonies, they still can't believe it. They want more and more and more and more information. And that's the definition of ignorance, So I think people within the Black and brown community, you need to take a time and pay attention to yourself and say, look, when it came down to situations like the Carmelo Anthony case, was I just gun-ho? Am I just like, okay, we need all the evidence, we need all the facts, we need to do a deep dive? And then when it comes down to a police officer and a Black person, am I just like, okay, instantly arrest a person, put them in jail, let them lose their job and pay out millions of dollars? And if you are doing that, then you need to sit there and say, is that actually fair? Would I want somebody to treat me like that? In one situation, I want them to do all the deep dive. And on the other hand, I want them to just, not even care about the facts, not even care about an investigation, just put me in jail because that's what the public says without all the facts. So think about this. Are you ignorant? Are you being ignorant? Are you an extremist? But enough of that being said, I'm not here to attack anyone. I'm going to try not to. And I know a lot of people, they're going to interpret it like I'm attacking them or their community. But I also want to mention the fact that
a burst pipe, a dead water heater, the AC calling it quits. Who do you call? HomeServe is an easy way to handle unexpected home repairs with plans covering stuff basic homeowners insurance usually won't. Instead of scrambling for a contractor, you make one call to get the repair process started. Join the millions of customers who trust HomeServe right now. Go to homeserve.com/podcast for 50% less your first year. That's homeserve.com/podcast. Savings compared to renewal price, void in Florida.
It's like anything else. If you, and I'm going to get back on track here, but I just want to also touch on this because I think that this is a very sensitive subject, right? Most of us have a problem when we're young. We have a problem with our parents. And the thing about it is, especially when we have loving parents, when you have a loving parent, they always try to correct you. If you're in a relationship with somebody that actually cares about you, or you have a really good friend that actually truly has your back, you'll notice that they always try to correct you, and they always call you out and say, hey, look, you're doing this wrong. You could do this better. If you do this, you're going to mess up on that. Right. And a lot of times, some people, they find themselves hating that person. You have marriages and relationships that fall apart because one person loves the other person so much that they're willing to say, hey, you're doing this and this could lead to harm. And the other person is taking it as an attack. And I see that happening a lot, especially in the Black and brown community, where you have podcasters, you have, people that are actually speaking up, and they're saying things that make sense, kind of like this podcast that we're having here. And they're being attacked, and they're being called Uncle Tom. They're being called, sellouts and different things like this. But you have to remember, for somebody to go and say to you, hey, there are certain things that we can do to save lives. There are certain things that we can do to make ourselves better. What is wrong with that? How are they a sellout? That means they love you enough. They love their community enough to say, hey, there are things that I see here that we need to fix. And the ones that are just saying, let's just blame the man. Let's just blame, slavery that happened so long ago that we never experienced. Like what? We're 3 to 4 generations out of this. If not, we're more than 3 to 4 generations out of slavery, man. And yet it's still something that people try to hold on to, and try to use as an excuse, as a crutch. But anyway, well, back to the purpose of this podcast. The situational awareness piece. Once you ran out there and you saw that the police had you surrounded, if it should have been a situation where you could just stop and think, my baby's with me. This is a misdemeanor. I'm done. And let me just go in. Yes, Child and Protective Services is going to get involved. But if I get in this car and I get into a high-speed chase with my baby, guaranteed I'm going to lose my child. Guaranteed. But if I just give up, they're just going to come in and, probably take my child, have them go stay with the grandma. But I'll be able to get rights back. I might not even, lose my child because it's just a misdemeanor. But if I get into this car and get into a high-speed chase, yeah, it's not going to end pretty well. So situational awareness. I think it's important that we teach people this. We teach young people this. And I'm going to say something that's a little bit controversial. If you have a family member that does crimes, they do petty theft, they are extremely quick to become violent, or they're just a criminal, or they're just a piece of shit person. We all have those in our families. Then that's when we need to be able, I would suggest that each one of you guys take the time and just have a quick conversation with them and say, look, I need you to understand something. If you have an argument with somebody, I know you walk around with a gun or a knife, there is no reason to pull out your gun or stab somebody with a knife if you just have a disagreement with them. Just walk away, because you're going to escalate something into something it doesn't need to be. If you have a warrant out for your arrest and, it's like a misdemeanor or something really stupid like child support, and you get pulled over by the police, don't get into a fight. Don't get into a high-speed chase, because now the situation's escalate. And what happened where they would have just took you in jail, brought you in front of a judge, and then start, taking money out of your check. Now you're spending, 5, 10, 20 years in jail, because the minute you get into that car, what happens is, and you get into a high-speed chase, you can injure somebody else. You can kill somebody else. Now the situation's gotten even worse, and there's so many incidences like that. We had the incident I talked about on my previous podcast where you had these teenagers, they decided to skip school, go down to Broward, they stole a car, they got into a high-speed chase with the police. They end up hitting a guy who was on a bike. Now the guy is a paraplegic. A simple, hey, we stole a car, not even at gunpoint, we just broke into the car and stole a car, turned into a situation of almost committing manslaughter. Imagine if the guy died. And I think that, And I have to look into it to see if the guy's still okay. But I know he was a paraplegic now. So I think we really need to teach people to sit there and say, look, have situational awareness. There's a lot of things that's happened lately that really, you know, did not need to happen, especially involving children. I spoke about this in 2 podcasts back. I believe it's podcast episode number 42. And, we talked about this. Like, we had the incident that happened last month where a mother, she had a suspended license. When she got pulled over, when the police tried to stop her, she decided to get into a high-speed chase. Police doesn't know your baby's in the car. They think you're in the car by yourself. What sane woman or mother or father or person would actually get into a high-speed chase with a infant in the backseat of the car, to the point where when they did the pit maneuver, the car flipped over because she lost control and the baby came crawling out. And the cop was so upset. He was like, that is the most stupidest thing you've done in your entire life, like that you will ever do in your entire life, because that's your child in there. And why would you do that? Oh, it's because I have a suspended license. Like, you put your child in danger first because you have a suspended license, you know? And she was just not thinking like, oh, I have a suspended license. In most cases, what do the police do when we have a suspended license? Especially in the middle of nowhere, like in Arkansas, right? In a place like Arkansas, they'd be like, you know what? Just get somebody to come and pick up the car. We don't have time to take you to jail. And they give you a ticket. You can get stopped and have no license, well, have a suspended license, have no insurance. And in most cases, they'll just tell you can't drive the car, call somebody to come and take the car, and they give you a ticket. Because it's not worth all the extra paperwork. Situational awareness. You had the other issue with the guy, and the same thing in Arkansas. Get into a high-speed chase. I think he had like 2 of his kids in the car with him. Lose control of the truck. Truck goes airborne, flips over, falls upside down. Almost kills his kid. And then I talked about Mr. Goods, up in New York. Got into got pulled over, said, oh, I'm a sovereign citizen, wanted to get into an argument back and forth with the police, got pepper sprayed. Then he jumped into the car that had his wife and 2 kids and got into a high-speed chase that lasts less than 40 seconds, hit speeding miles of 130 miles an hour. Got a pit maneuver done. His 11-year-old daughter was ejected out of the vehicle and she died. Yeah, he's going to get paid some money. And they sent the police officer to jail for 7 years, 2 to 7 years, for involuntary manslaughter. The father, no charges brought against him. And that's another conversation where we need to talk about, the laws need to be changed. And I talked about this in my last podcast, where I said Texas has a law that's called a intent misconduct intent or something like that law, where basically if you committed a criminal act, if your intent was to commit a criminal act, or you committed a criminal act, a harmful intent, and then you get injured or something happens, the people are not liable, the city's not liable. And I think that's something that we need to spread out more, because people are going to use this as a payday. I'm going to try not to trigger those individuals that want to protest about the shooting of this child, and when I mentioned the payday thing, but we all know that's exactly what's going to happen. The families, this young lady, she's lost her baby, and I don't know her. I don't know if she's a good person. I don't know if she's a bad person. I just don't know her. But this young lady's lost her baby. But I want her, and I hope she's wise enough. And I hope somebody in her family is wise enough, or she has somebody around her who's wise enough to say to her, look, your mama and your daddy, the people who's on camera, aunties, grandma, and all these other family members that's going to start coming around, they're coming around because they know you're probably going to get a payday. And they're hoping for you to get a payday. Now, what are you going to do with that money when you get a payday? Because more than likely, that's exactly what's going to happen. The city's not going to want to deal with it. They're going to feel like law enforcement should have known better, and we're not going to hold our citizens accountable. And it's just going to be another cycle where we encourage more and more people to do this. And that's why I said with this particular podcast, what I'm saying to you is have conversations with your knucklehead family members and friends and let them know there's certain things that's just not worth it. You know, you commit a misdemeanor, just remember when you commit that crime, it's a misdemeanor. It's no need to escalate into like a felony or to a murder situation. This Carmelo Anthony situation is a prime example. Prime example. Like you walking around with a knife. You know, you're underneath a tent with like 4 or 5 other people. They're not trying to jump you. You're having an altercation with one person. And yet you think you can justify that and pull out a knife and stab somebody. Situational awareness. It's like, is it even worth it? You know what I mean? Who am I doing this for? Who am I going to try to impress? If I stab this person. And then for those guys that were there, situational awareness. This is one dude. It's like 4 or 5 of us. And he's willing to act all bold. Like, oh, touch me if you want to. Push me if you want to. That means this guy wanted, and he has a book bag with him. He wanted like he has a gun or a weapon on him. That's why he's feeling so bold. So see, situational awareness could help criminals, and it could also help citizens. Help us all stay safe. Lessen the amount of crimes that we have out there, unnecessary crimes. And like I said, you guys can protest about the racist part. You guys can protest about the police part. All I'm saying in this particular podcast is we need to have conversations with our loved ones, explain to them that certain things are just not necessary, and that a simple situation, if escalated, could turn out really bad. There are so many hypotheticals here, all right, in this situation. Hypothetically, she could have walked out the store with the Pampers, saw the cops and the police and said, hey, cuz if you decide to go and jump in your car and drive off, that's fine, but I got my baby with me. I can't be a part of that. I'm just going to give up. Like this young lady went in there to steal a simple Pampers. All right. She went in there. They stole a simple Pampers. As simple as that is, that one decision after stealing that Pampers and then deciding to get into, well, I won't even say just that one. That was the start of the bad decision. Now, once you got outside and you realized the police were on you, that decision to get into that vehicle and speed off, that destroyed how many lives? Your baby is gone. You have one other person who was shot in critical injury. The other person who was not shot, maybe not the driver or the passenger, the other person, we don't know what charge is going to be brought up against them. The police officer, once their name gets out into the public, their entire lives are over. Whether it's the video, and you know what, there's plenty of videos there at Walmart, and they're just going to wait for all the videos to come out, and they're going to gather everything, and then they're going to make a decision on what they want to do. But regardless, if the video shows that the car was aimed at them, you're going to have people and say, well, why was the police officer in the middle of the street? They could have jumped to the side. Their lives were not in danger, blah, blah, blah. That police officer's life is completely destroyed. If they're married, they have a wife and kids, or a husband and kids, more than likely that's going to end up in a divorce because the family, they're not going to want their family to go through that. You know, communities are going to be split up. We're talking about it now. So how many other people have already started protesting by the Walmart? The Walmart might even get shut down, and the people over there may end up losing their jobs. That one decision that you made to steal that Pampers and then not to just turn yourself in is going to affect hundreds of lives. It's going to affect hundreds of lives. That Walmart is not going to be the same. And then people are going to say, well, why did they haul off on the trial and pressing charges and doing all this other stuff? Because right now, if they move too fast, that Walmart's going to get burned down. All those people are going to be out of job pretty soon if this situation gets out of hand. This is a sad thing. We need to do better. I'm going to cut this podcast here. I post new episodes every Tuesday and Thursdays. Ladies and gentlemen, good night.
You can never have too many tools. Shop DeWalt deals at Lowe's. Get a free Select DeWalt 20-Volt Max Power Tool when you buy a Select 20-Volt Max 5 amp hour battery kit. Plus, get a free additional DeWalt 20-volt max 8-amp-hour battery when you buy a DeWalt 10-inch 20-volt max dual-bevel compounded miter saw. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 6/24 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.